that the very thing you're fighting against right now, that worry gnawing at your chest, that relationship that won't bend to your will, that future you cannot guarantee, is actually your greatest teacher. What if the source of your deepest suffering holds the key to your most profound peace? This morning, I watched a masterclass in letting go, and the teacher wasn't in robes or sitting cross-legged on a cushion. She was 73 years old, standing in a hospital room, holding her husband's hand as the machines that had kept him alive for 3 weeks were finally turned off. As his breathing slowed, then stopped, she whispered something that changed everything I thought I knew about love and loss. "Thank you for showing me how to love without holding on." In that sacred moment, I witnessed what the Buddha discovered 2,500 years ago beneath the Bodhi tree, that our greatest suffering comes not from what happens to us, but from our desperate attempts to control what cannot be controlled. And our greatest peace comes not from getting what we want, but from learning to want what is. The cage we build from good intentions. We are all amateur architects of invisible prisons. We build them with the best intentions, walls of expectation, bars of should be, locks of if only. We construct these cages so carefully, so lovingly, believing they will protect us from the unpredictability of life. But what we discover, often too late, is that we've imprisoned ourselves. Consider Sarah, a devoted mother who spent 15 years orchestrating her daughter's life like a conductor leading a symphony. Every note had to be perfect. The right schools, the right friends, the right activities. But when her daughter chose art over medicine, chose travel over college, chose her own path over her mother's dreams, Sarah felt her world collapse. The cage she'd built to protect her daughter had become her own prison. The Buddha taught us something revolutionary. The very act of trying to control outcomes is what creates our suffering. In the Pali language, this is called tanha, literally meaning thirst. We thirst for life, to be different than it is. And this thirst, this desperate reaching, is what keeps us trapped. But here's what the Buddha discovered that night under the stars. When we stop trying to control the river, we can finally learn to swim. The wisdom of water. Water never fights the mountain. It doesn't argue with the rocks or demand that valleys be straight. It simply flows, finding the path of least resistance, wearing away obstacles not through force, but through gentle, persistent presence. In its yielding, water becomes unstoppable. This is the paradox at the heart of Buddhist teaching. In surrendering control, we find true power. In accepting what is, we discover what's possible. In letting go, we finally learn to hold what matters. I think of Marcus, a CEO who spent 30 years building an empire, only to watch it crumble in a single market crash. For months, he fought against the reality of his losses, depleting his remaining resources in futile attempts to recreate what was gone. Only when he stopped fighting the current of change could he see the new opportunities that had been there all along. The ancient Buddhist text, the Tao Te Ching, reminds us, the sage does not attempt anything very big, and thus achieves greatness. This isn't about lowering our standards or abandoning our dreams. It's about understanding that true achievement comes not from forcing outcomes, but from aligning with the natural flow of life. The sacred space between heartbeats. There exists a space more profound than any cathedral, more sacred than any temple. It's the space between one heartbeat and the next, between one breath and the following one. In this gap, this pause, this moment of pure being, lies the secret to everything the Buddha taught. Most of us live our lives like we're running from a fire, reacting, responding, rushing from one emergency to the next. But the Buddha discovered that between every stimulus and response lies a choice. In that choice lives our freedom. The Vietnamese Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh called this the miracle of mindfulness, the ability to pause, to breathe, to meet this moment with presence rather than panic. When the email arrives that threatens to ruin your day, when the phone call brings news you don't want to hear, when the future you planned dissolves before your eyes, in that moment, you have a choice. You can react from the ancient patterns of fight or flight, or you can pause. You can breathe. You can remember that you are not your circumstances. You are the awareness that observes them, the art of holding without grasping. The Buddha often spoke of the middle way, the path between extremes. In our emotional lives, this becomes the art of holding without grasping, of caring without clinging, of loving without possessing. Imagine holding a handful of sand. Squeeze tightly, and it slips through your fingers. Cup your hands gently, and the sand rests peacefully in your palms. This is how we can hold everything precious in our lives, our relationships, our dreams, our very sense of self. My friend Elena learned this lesson through heartbreak. After her divorce, she spent months trying to hold on to the life she'd built, the future she'd planned, the person she thought she was. Only when she opened her hands, metaphorically speaking, did she discover who she could become. The Buddha taught that attachment is the root of suffering, but this doesn't mean we should love less. It means we should love differently. We can love fully without needing to possess completely. We can care deeply without demanding guarantees. The ocean of thoughts. One of the most liberating realizations in Buddhist practice is this: you are not drowning in your thoughts. You are the ocean in which thoughts appear and disappear like waves. You are not the storm of emotions. You are the sky in which storms arise and pass away. When we identify with every thought that crosses our mind, we become like swimmers who think they are the waves themselves. We exhaust ourselves trying to stop the natural movement of mental activity. But when we learn to rest in our essential nature, the awareness that observes thoughts and emotions without being defined by them, we find an unshakable peace. A meditation teacher once told me, "The mind is like a snow globe. When you shake it, everything becomes chaotic and unclear. But if you simply set it down and wait, the snow settles naturally and clarity returns." This is the practice of mindfulness, learning to set down the snow globe of our minds and trust in the natural settling that follows. If this message resonates with you, and you're seeking more moments of peace and insight, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for daily reflections rooted in ancient wisdom and modern clarity. The Compassion Revolution. Perhaps the most radical and liberating teaching in all of Buddhism is this: the person who most needs your compassion is you. In a world that often equates self-worth with productivity and discipline with harshness, we are conditioned to believe that self-criticism is a virtue. We are taught that the inner voice that scolds, shames, and belittles us is necessary for growth. But the Buddha saw through this illusion. He taught that true transformation arises not from self-punishment, but from self-understanding. Self-compassion is not indulgence. It is not weakness. It is the courageous act of turning toward your own pain with an open heart. It is the first step toward real wisdom, because until you are willing to see your own suffering clearly and respond with care, you cannot truly see the suffering of others. When you catch yourself in that all-too-familiar spiral of self-judgment, try this quietly radical act. Pause. Place your hand gently over your heart. Take a breath, and say to yourself as you would to someone you love, "This is a moment of struggle, and struggle is part of being human. May I meet this moment with gentleness. May I meet myself with kindness." This is not about avoiding responsibility. This is not about pretending you're flawless or making excuses for your mistakes. It is about recognizing your humanity. Just as you would not scold a child for falling while learning to walk, you do not need to shame yourself for being in the process of becoming. You will fall, again and again, and each time you are given a choice. Will you rise with the clenched fist of self-condemnation, or with the open hand of compassion? The Buddha discovered something revolutionary. Compassion is not only more humane, it is more effective. The mind grows not in the soil of shame, but in the nourishment of love. Growth rooted in fear eventually withers, but growth rooted in kindness flourishes, deepens, and endures. So begin here, with yourself, with the one person you will be with for every breath of your life. Speak to yourself with tenderness. Be your own refuge, because when you learn to offer yourself compassion, you become capable of offering it to the world. The monastery of daily life. The Buddha's awakening didn't arrive in a blaze of divine thunder or a sudden cosmic explosion. It unfolded in silence, in stillness, in the steady rhythm of his breath and the quiet courage to face reality exactly as it is. This is perhaps one of the most revolutionary truths in all of spiritual history. Enlightenment is not some distant mystical prize reserved for monks in mountain caves or saints cloaked in mystery. It is something far more intimate. It is available in this very moment to anyone willing to pay attention. It reveals itself not through escape from life, but through deep presence within it. The Buddha didn't awaken by transcending the human experience, but by entering it fully, by sitting beneath a tree and daring to stay still. He watched his thoughts rise and fall. He breathed in and out. He observed the passing sensations, the waves of craving and fear, the illusions of separation and self. And in that radical presence, clarity dawned. This same path is available to you, not someday, not somewhere else, but now. Here, peace we find in the ever-changing now. Life doesn't become less uncertain, but we become more open, more flexible, more compassionate toward ourselves and others. We don't practice to escape impermanence. We practice to live in harmony with it. And slowly, anxiety loses its grip, not because life becomes certain, but because we no longer need it to be. As the Zen teaching reminds us, because nothing lasts, everything matters. Let that truth be your refuge, the invitation to come home. And so we arrive here, at the quiet edge of all striving, all seeking, all grasping, not at a finish line, not at a dramatic crescendo of certainty, but at a soft threshold, a place that doesn't ask for achievement, but for surrender, a place that doesn't reward perfection, but presence. We arrive not carrying trophies of wisdom or maps of enlightenment, but with open hands, trembling perhaps, but open nonetheless. We arrive with hearts that have been broken and mended 1,000 times. And in that breaking learned how to hold more than we ever imagined possible. Because life, in its endless unfolding of light and shadow, joy and sorrow, has been whispering the truth to us all along. That peace is not something we earn through control, but something we fall into when we finally let go. That love is not something we secure by holding tighter, but something we discover when we stop clinging. That awakening is not some distant peak at the end of a heroic climb, but the quiet, breathtaking realization that the path beneath your feet has always been sacred. We spend so much of our lives racing to fix, to prove, to arrive, to become. We build identities out of striving. We chase stillness as if it were somewhere other than here. But the Dharma, the timeless truth, gently invites us to stop, to pause, to breathe, and to ask, can you meet this moment exactly as it is? Can you sit in the fire of discomfort without reaching for escape? Can you feel joy without fearing its loss? Can you hold your own ache with the same compassion you would offer a child in pain? Because the truth is, beneath all the stories, all the noise, all the masks, you are not broken. You are not behind. You are not too late. You are a being of awareness. You are a wellspring of compassion. You are a mirror of the very mystery that spins galaxies and blossoms flowers in silence. And it is here, not in some future version of yourself, but here, in this honest, raw, imperfect breath, that transformation unfolds. Not through effort or force, but through the quiet power of recognition, of remembering, of returning. You don't have to wait until you are more healed. You don't have to wait until you've conquered every shadow or silenced every doubt. You can begin now with your weariness, with your longing, with the trembling sincerity of simply being alive. Because this moment, in all its ordinariness, in all its chaos and calm, is already enough. And you, exactly as you are already enough. Let this be your turning point, not the dramatic awakening the world sells you, but the quieter revolution of coming home to yourself. The holy pause that says, I don't need to chase peace. I am peace when I stop running. The soft exhale that whispers, I don't need to become something else. I only need to remember who I've always been. So may you walk gently now,